Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo. And this episode is a super special episode. We are doing our final mock draft before the NFL draft, which is this Thursday. So much talent coming into the league. We're going to make our predictions, or we say here our spoilers, as Paul Heyman would say. And we are really excited to dive into it. Before it, though, Genoa, tell me how you're feeling today.
Yo, Dween Nation, I'm feeling so good. Mock draft season for the NFL draft that is this Thursday, Justin. So excited. I mean, we're going to be talking about it all week, man. I mean, this is not get better than this. And I'm ready to mock draft, Justin. Let's pick our future stars to go on along these teams that need talent so desperately.
Yes, let's dive into it. So, all right, you're looking at our screen here. We're gonna enter the draft. We're gonna enter it, and we're gonna start it. I'm gonna start it off. See if we can start off hot. I'll have the odd numbers, and Genoa here will have the even ones. And I'm starting off. Obviously, we talked about in the quarterback episode. It's pretty clear that Chicago Bears are going Caleb Williams here at number one. He's got all the talent in the world. He's being placed in with a good surrounding cast. We don't love the coaches, but we love the players around him. So really excited about that. Not much to dive into there. And before Genoa picks, also let you know this mock draft will have trades. We are very excited to throw in some trades. We got the PFF plus, a little upgrade to get in here. And yeah, that moves us to number 2, Genoa. Who are the Washington Commanders taking at the second overall pick?
Justin, they're going to go with Jaden Daniels, the reigning Heisman winner, to go along with that pretty, stacked offense. They have two good running backs, a good couple receivers, play calls being orchestrated by Cliff Kingsbury. Let's go ahead and get Jaden Daniels to be a Washington Commander.
Cool. Yeah, that totally works well. And looking at his fantasy value that he'll have with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson, Eckler still got some juice and a security blanket in Zach Ertz with a pretty solid offensive mind and Cliff Kingsbury at the OC. Really good. Honestly, his fantasy value will be an interesting one to talk about post draft. But moving to 3, I mean, guys, do not look at the news this week because New England is all over the place. I'm hearing they're wanting to trade. I'm hearing they don't like what they're getting, that they want to move, but now they're thinking they're going to stay. I'm going to look past the BS, and I'm going to go with Drake May at 3. I really liked what you spoke about in our quarterbacks ranking episode recently, how he could be a real culture change, a real new direction for the Patriots, and I like that, and they need quarterback. Bailey Zappi's what they got on the roster right now. So Drake May at 3. Genoa, what are your thoughts at the number 4 pick?
So I have a couple thoughts, Justin. I feel like around this time, there's going to be a trade on the block. But for my sake, I would love to see Marvin Harrison Jr. catch passes from Kyler Murray. So let's go ahead and have the Ohio State product going to Arizona and being Arizona's number 1 wide receiver and being their next Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a genius idea. I think they will be listening to trade offers, but I like that they get their star wide receiver, and I think that's what they'll end up doing. I'm kind of behind that as well. Moving to 5, I'm seeing our first trade happen. I know you want it, and I want it too. And Malik Neighbors to Los Angeles would be just phenomenal, but I don't think that they'll be able to pass up a big trade like this one. I feel like it's been talked about a little bit, but I'm going that the Vikings are trading up to 5. They're giving up their two first rounders this year and a first rounder next year, and we're going to offer the trade and force it. We're going to force the trade, and it's going to happen here. Minnesota is now on the board, and they're going to get their guy that has been talked about in J.J. McCarthy at 5. I know you don't love J.J. as much as I think he could have some good potential there. 5 does seem a little high, but I'm looking at what I think will happen more than I think what should happen. And they get their franchise guy. Obviously, they made that trade with Houston, which helped them. Now they had 2 first-rounders. And McCarthy's set up to be with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and sooner or later TJ Hawkinson. And I like that move for the Chargers too. They get 3 first-rounders and they swap a first and then they get 2 more on top of that. And they just need to stockpile some picks because they still need, wide receiver help, a lot of defensive help. So I think that's a good move on both sides. But yeah, JJ at 5. We got 4 quarterbacks in the top 5, but we're moving to 6 with the New York Giants. What do you got?
Justin, how about back-to-back trades for another quarterback? I have the Vegas Raiders saying, you know what? We're in a
All
tough
right.
division with Mahomes. We can't seem to beat him. We're a quarterback away. Let's go out and make a trade with the New York Giants, who don't really know what their future is. Justin, the Giants pretty much are just saying whatever for this year. We'll be back next year with the first pick. So how about, Justin, the Vegas Raiders trading up to get their guy, Michael Penix Jr.? They're all in on him. They feel like he has the accuracy to get the ball to Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. They're going all in with Penix, making a trade. The Giants don't really care, but the Vegas Raiders do. They're trying to be that. They're trying to knock off the Chiefs in that division. So let's go ahead and take Penix. I'm not really sure what exactly they trade, but obviously I think you have it settled down there. The Giants will have a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks going into next year.
I gave New York, obviously they moved from 6 to 13. They
Mm-hmm.
also get the Raiders first rounder next year and a second rounder
Yep.
uh, in this draft here. So pretty solidly even deal. The Raiders move up in a surprise move, but I love it because they still need quarterback. I don't think
Yeah.
I mean, they got Gardner and Aiden O'Connell, but that's not a pretty
Yeah.
quarterback room, especially to count on it for a season. So they
Mm-hmm.
bring in a good rookie. Penix can hook up with Devontae Adams. I like it. And we're moving to 7, and the fireworks are already out there, but I'm going to have to reel it down a little bit,
Yeah.
and I'm going that the Tennessee Titans are going with Joe Alt.
Yeah.
I
Great
know
pick.
that they could argue they need wide receiver with Hopkins getting older, but they just paid big money for Calvin Ridley to join, and so I think they're okay with their receiver room, and they get a good tackle to help out and add to the Peter Skoronski draft pick from last year. And so yeah, I got Tennessee with Joe Alt, and we're to 8, and we have no defensive players so far. Does Atlanta make that decision?
Absolutely, Justin. They're going to go with Dallas Turner. I feel like during this offseason, the Falcons focused a lot on their offense, with Kirk Cousins and making sure that they have a good offense going forward. But now in the draft, it's time to build a defense with Raheem Morris, who is the former defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. And the Falcons go with the guy out of Alabama.
I love it. I
Mm-hmm.
actually absolutely love it. Dallas Turner has been touted as having the highest potential out of all the
Mm-hmm.
defensive players in this draft. Atlanta needs edge rusher, and it really works out there for them. Now we move to 9, and man, I'm stuck. I'm thinking like, man, where should we go with this? There's some I'm gauging a trade
Yeah.
idea here, seeing if there's something I really like for one of these teams to pull off. And I'm gonna make something happen here. I'm gonna make Denver move up
Yeah.
to 9. They move up 3 spots. They give up a second rounder, and another later pick, and they move to 9, and they make the draft pick that we were hoping they would, and they get Bo Nix at 9, and quarterbacks are ablazing. It's the third trade in the first 10 picks, but Denver gets the quarterback they're desiring. We really like that fit. As much as I have some concerns of Bo Nix, I do think with Sean Payton, that is his uh, best setup for success. So I have Nix at 9, and we move to 10 to you with the New York Jets.
Well, Justin, I know who's the next pick on that draft at 11. So the Jets go with Brock Bowers out of Georgia. They need their tight end. Aaron Rodgers never, I mean, you can make the argument that Aaron Rodgers has never really had a number one tight end. He finally gets it at around age 40, 41 with the Jets. Let's go ahead and get the guy to Georgia.
That's perfect, and we'll waste no time. Obviously, it happened. I didn't think he'd make it back around here, but Malik Neighbors is a Los Angeles Charger.
Yep.
To the happiness of us both, especially you with that beautiful take you had last a couple weeks ago. Malik Neighbors becomes the clear number 1 wide receiver for the Chargers in a very needy wide receiver room. And we love it. We think it's and the Chargers clearly win out here. If I'm a Chargers fan, trading back and still getting Malik would be the dream scenario. So we are with Neighbors there, and we're on to 12. with the Chicago Bears, Genoa.
Justin, there's a lot of things the Bears need now, but since they just drafted a quarterback and they're going to need to protect them, that O-line has always been a little shaky. So let's go ahead and get a guy, the tackle out of Washington, Troy Fautanu.
Fautanu. Yeah, he's
Fautanu.
a good.
Let's go ahead and get him. We need a guy that's going to be able to protect our, Guy and Caleb.
That's great. Yeah, and Fautanu has been a draft riser through this entire process.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very talented guy. He's got long arms and can really be a defining piece to an offensive line. So I like that there. And we're here to the Giants. They traded back with the Raiders earlier on, and it's clear that they've got the piece they want. They trade back, and they're probably happy with this, and they get Rome Odunze because they need wide receiver as well. Odunze to the Giants would be really special for them. I feel like his fantasy value would be interesting just because of how poor this offense how we think they're going to be. But for the Giants, it's an A+ signing, an A+ draft pick, and that moves us to the Saints, who also have some decisions to make.
Yeah, so with the Saints, they're never going to be a flashy picker. I don't think they go quarterback just in this draft, just because I believe that they still think that they have something with Derek Carr. And I don't think they go wide receiver just because they picked Olave not that long ago. So I'm thinking O-line or D-line. So let's go ahead and looking down this list, I want to say they go another edge. So it's a mixture between Latu or Jared Verse. I'm gonna go with Jared Verse. I just feel like
All
the Saints, they're not always the flashiest picker. They're just gonna go ahead and get an edge rusher. They love to add to that defense. That's always kind of solid year in and year out. They don't have one of the most best defenses, but they have a defense that's solid. I would say 8 to 9 weeks out of the season. So they go ahead and get Jared Verse.
That's great. I really like that pick.
Mm-hmm.
Verse is a more ready talent than
Yeah.
I believe Dallas Turner is day one,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got like a good floor for Verse with a lower ceiling than Turner has, but still is just a phenomenal player. At Florida State, he did some special things, and he's a high energy type of player, so
Yeah.
that's a great pick. Now to Indianapolis, and there's some thoughts here. I wanted them to go wide receiver or tight end. I know defense could be in question here, but I'm going to make this interesting, and I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. to
Wow.
the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
Alec Pierce hasn't really panned out. I know they paid some money to Michael Pittman to stay, but to help out Anthony Richardson would be a huge get for them, and Brian Thomas Jr. would be an ideal pick. And they really solidify that wide receiver room. Pittman and Brian Thomas now become a top 10, top 12 wide receiver duo in the league. From what was really worrisome for the Colts, they really sure up that area, and so that's why I like it there. But what are your thoughts with Brian Thomas? Could he surpass Pittman in a year or two? Like, what would that dynamic be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Pittman, we kind of seen the best he can offer. He's not a absolute solidified number one, but he's a really good wide receiver. I do think Brian Thomas will take over eventually. You know how much I love my LSU wide receivers, so I wouldn't doubt that Brian Thomas could have a better season than Pittman if he were to be drafted by Indianapolis.
Yeah. All right. Well, now I'm deferring it back to you with the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a little bit of a turn here. I want to make it fun. With the Seahawks, they're not gonna go flashy, but I do think they go Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. I do think that they made a lot of cuts this past offseason with their secondary and their defense. So I feel like now they need a little bit of a spark with a defensive minded head coach. They go Terrion Arnold and get their franchise corner.
That's really good. And to add to the spice, I'm going to get Jacksonville making a trade here.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Philadelphia Eagles realizing that their cornerback room is pretty dog crap, and they didn't make any changes to really help that room. So they move up. They get rid of one of their second rounders to move up 5 spots. And they're going to take a corner here, and they're going to take one of my favorite corners in this draft, and it's Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. He was a Senior Bowl favorite coming out of it. People were in love with what he put on the tape and what he was able to do against receivers. And I know that you'll see in our other episodes if you've listened to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Senior Bowl fan. If you do good in that, it really translates to the league. And Mitchell was one of those stars that came out of it. and Philly would love to have him. So I have Philly trading up with Jacksonville. Now it's Cincinnati's turn. What are they going to do?
Yeah, Justin, I think with the Bengals, you're always going to have issues with their offensive line. You have to keep Joe Burrow very healthy. So I'm looking down at the offensive lineman. They do need to tackle. So let's go with our Marius Mims out of Georgia. I do like
Okay.
J.C. Latham. I just feel like Mims is more of a physical guy that can, block for Burrow. And that's the priority here. We have to have Burrow healthy because if Burrow plays a full season last year, who knows if the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl, and who knows if the Ravens win that division. So definitely need to keep Joe Burrow healthy in that division.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna come in here with the Rams, and I look at it, and to me they're going one of the lines. They're going D line or O
Mhm.
line, and I look at how they lost. They lost
There.
Aaron Donald. He
Yeah.
just retired, and so they're gonna draft his replacement in Byron Murphy the
Ooh.
second out of Texas, a really explosive pass rusher. He's a big guy, but he makes defenses pay. And I really like that pick for the Rams, and that jumps us to Pittsburgh and you're on the clock with that.
Ooh, there's so many things Pittsburgh could do. I, Justin, personally feel like the Pittsburgh defense is a little bit solidified. I don't think we should add anything soon yet. I think let's go offense. And you know what, Justin? I want to make it fun. Let's go wide receiver. Our quarterbacks are rather Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. They're going to be throwing the ball, and we need a guy. So you know what? Let's go with A.D. Mitchell. Let's go ahead and take
All
him. The Chiefs are eyeing him around this time. And you know what? If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm competing with the Chiefs in that conference. I need a speedy guy too. We just traded away Deontay Johnson to Carolina. So let's get a replacement for our two quarterbacks that we're gonna need to figure that out as well. So let's go AD Mitchell out of Texas.
I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good pick. And they need wide receivers. George Pickens might be mad now that they got a first round guy in there
Yeah,
after he had his brief moment as the one lone wide receiver. But yeah, all right, we're moving to Miami, and I think Miami's going to be in replacement mode. They got Teron Armstead on the side for O line, but he is always hurt,
yeah,
and he's getting old and doesn't have a lot of time left. And so I look at these three guys, and man, is it tough to pick between them. But I'm going to go with J.C. Latham out of Alabama, a really good tackle who can start day one or really learn behind what Teron Armstead still has out there, and then will take over sooner or later. But yeah, moving on to 22, Jacksonville traded back with Philadelphia, and now it's to you with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
yeah. With Jacksonville, it's really tricky because it does seem like they might go defense. I don't really think they should. They had the number one overall not that long ago, a couple years ago, and they went with Trayvon Walker. So I feel like they need to add a little bit with their pass catchers. I want to make this fun. So let's go, Justin, with I'm gonna make this fun. Let's do a surprise and let's get Trevor Lawrence a speedy guy and Troy Franklin. I know it's not the most traditional guy and he might not go the first round, but hey, everybody's got their wide receiver. Trevor Lawrence still has yet to have a number one guy that he can throw the ball to. Christian Kirk is pretty good, but he's not a number one guy yet. So let's go ahead and get another speedy guy in Troy Franklin. We can address anything else in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I enjoyed that pick. They definitely could use an extra guy. They brought in Gabe Davis,
Yeah.
but he's really inconsistent. Kirk is good. I like Kirk, and then Zay Jones too was injury plagued last year, and I don't know if he's a game changer per
Yeah.
se. He did exceed expectations when he joined them, but it hasn't been super special. But now we moved to the Chargers, who they traded back with Minnesota early on in the draft. They still got Malik Neighbors, and now they have this 23rd pick, and they got some choices to make. Uh, Man, this one's tougher because you could look at edge, but they still got Bosa and Mack. I know they're both
Yeah.
kind of older and they cost a lot, but they kept them around for a reason. I think they're there and they'll stick there for a year. And then you look at corner, possibly. Uh, I'm like, ah, man, I'm really in between things. But you know what? I'm actually going to take a little bit of a riskier shot here. This guy named Graham Barton, he plays guard or center, and they just lost their center. He retired, Corey Linsley, and so
Yeah.
Graham Barton will slot in as the day one starter at center for the Chargers, and I think it's still a really good move. He's a really big athlete, and you would usually look at Talisi Fuaga or Olu Fashanu as a possible pick for O line, but their tackle group is not the worst, but their center group is the one that is in need, and so they bring in Graham Barton to help a team that is looking to be a run first team with Greg Roman at the helm. So we move past the Chargers and we're on to the Dallas Cowboys. What are they going to do?
So Justin, I feel like with Dallas, they're not going to make the flashiest pick. Most of the wide receivers that are first round day one are pretty much gone. So I do think they're going to go corner, Justin. Add to that defense with Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Cool.
They want to have Kool-Aid have some, Alabama. They do have Trayvon Diggs back there already, but they don't have Diggs or they don't have Gilmore anymore. Excuse me. And Diggs is coming off an injury, so they need kind of a sparky guy in the back there while Micah, does pass rush things. So let's go with Kool-Aid out of Alabama to be a Dallas Cowboy.
I like that. That's a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
McKinstry too. Some look at it as he got worse over his college career,
Yeah,
but I kind of would attribute it more to Terrion Arnold got better in
yeah.
college and became the cornerback one there. McKinstry has a really strong floor, and you mentioned that Dallas does need cornerbacks after losing Stephon Gilmore and Trayvon Diggs coming back from injury. So I like that there. With Green Bay, I'm looking at O-line
Yeah.
just because they cut David Bakhtiari, and I'm looking at Olu Fashanu out of Penn
Mm-hmm.
State, who's fallen a little bit further than my liking at first glimpse of this. He is a little injured coming in. That's with some concerns with health, but he's really good O lineman, and looking at it from last year, he was kind of a favorite to be a top 10 pick, but he's kind of fallen here. But a really good pick for Green Bay. But yeah, all right, moving to Tampa. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Justin, I'm gonna love this pick. I'm not sure if he's gonna go in the first round, but you're very familiar with this guy. You actually saw him not too long ago, Justin. And this team just lost Devin White to Philly, so they're gonna need a linebacker. Tampa Bay's that team. So let's go with Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. He is projected to be kind of like a in the first, kind of a second, round guy. But you know what? Let's make this fun. Tampa Bay, they kind of have their offense set out. They re-signed Mike and Baker. So I feel like they want to add more to their defense. They won a Super Bowl with having a pretty decent defense. So let's go Cooper, replacing Devin White and that aging kind of Tampa Bay defense. Justin, this guy's going to lead the way.
I am so happy you did that, Edgerrin Cooper. I did get to meet him this past weekend at Texas A&M's Maroon and White game. He was there to say hi to fans and the team. In this week before the draft, I got to get a picture with him and just chat with him a little bit. He's really excited about the draft, and best to him, because if he's a first rounder, he's set up for success on whatever team. And I really like the Tampa Bay decision there. Now we move to Arizona. They picked Maserati Marv with their first pick. And so they have a couple decisions to make after that. And I'm actually looking at these three guys
Yeah.
here. You got Cooper DeJean, Laiatu Latu, and Johnny Newton. And I'm going to go with Laiatu Latu. He's fallen a little bit further than I like to. Obviously, the concern a lot of people raise with him is that he actually was medically told he wasn't going to play football a handful of
Yeah.
years ago, and was able to come back to the game and has been otherworldly ever since. You watch his film, he is really special, and
Yeah.
Arizona really needs a good pass rusher, and they get in Laiatu Latu. Now we move to Buffalo, and they're in need of wide receiver, but a lot of receivers have been taken. What are your thoughts on what they could do?
Yeah, Justin, this where it gets tricky. Now, looking at Buffalo, just like I'm looking at these receivers. I'm not sure if they go so early with Worthy. What do you think before I make a pick? Do you think they would go early with Xavier Worthy?
So I'm looking. Let me look at here real quick. They have their next pick after this one is the 60th pick, which is a pretty well down the list, so late second rounder. I think the only other way they'd probably go is corner, because they cut Tre'Davious White, and they lost Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So
Yeah,
secondary is in need. So I can understand there not trying to pick the best person available rather than the closest to need. And that's what they usually do. They did that last year, and they talked about it when they picked Dalton Kincaid. They were like, "Hey, we didn't need tight end, but we really wanted the best player, and that's why they went with Kincaid." So that's kind of where I would be.
Yeah.
I'd understand if they went wide receiver, but I like corner too. So yeah, what you go ahead after that?
Let's go ahead and go with Cooper DeJean out of
Yeah,
Iowa. I feel like the Bills, they just like Seattle, they got rid of a bunch of like pretty good players. They just cut them just to make cap room. So they do need a corner in that secondary. And hey, there's nothing wrong with getting another guy that can try to limit, Patrick Mahomes' receivers in the playoffs. So maybe Cooper could be a guy that could, be a step up to the plate in Buffalo.
that's pretty good.
Hmm.
I'm looking at what I want to do with this next pick, because Detroit at the first look at it when we've made our first mock draft, they were in some real need for defensive tackle,
Hmm.
but they made moves to really fix that. They had a big signing in DJ Reader from the Cincinnati
Yeah.
Bengals, and they made that move there. And then if you look at their second big need was cornerback, but they made a big trade getting Carlton Davis in the building. They still
Yeah.
got Kirby Joseph, but they could use help there. They don't really need tackle help. Man, it's a little bit tougher. You know what? I'm gonna make this then an interesting look at it. People are gonna want um, a trade, and I'm going to look at a good one because there are some pieces here. I'm going to go with Carolina. So Carolina, they have the 33rd pick, so they're not too far out. They're only the first pick on day 2, but I think they're looking at it and they're saying, "Wow, Baltimore could draft a wide receiver. Kansas City could draft a wide receiver. We can't let that happen." And so they move up and they take a wide receiver here, and I think that they're going to take Lad McConkey out of Georgia. Um, he's been placed there a lot and has had some good meetings with them. And I think he's a really good possession wide receiver that they need because they need more weapons for Bryce Young, and that's the deal they do. Now we move back. Or what are your thoughts with Carolina? They're getting their new probable number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, it'd be nice for setting up, Bryce Young. Now he has Deontay Johnson and Ladd. It'd be pretty good combination with Thielen in Carolina. I guess now it gets them going. We know Dave Canales is a pretty good coordinator. He can, as a new head coach now, he can orchestrate some plays for Bryce Young, and Carolina will be on the rising stock from there. It'd be nice to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, you got Baltimore at
Okay,
30. They need some needs, or they have some needs, and you're gonna fill one of them.
Justin, I desperately just want Baltimore to get a wide receiver so bad. I mean, one of my must-haves. And you know what? This guy might be a second round guy, but you know what? Let's do it. And he had a lot of first round stock, and I'm going with Keon Coleman. Get their physical wide receiver guy. They do have a speedy guy in Zay Flowers. Let's get a physical wide receiver. Keon Coleman. I feel like he fits that nitty and gritty, culture there in Baltimore, and it gives Lamar Jackson now a number 2 receiver to go along with Andrews and Zay Flowers and Derrick Henry.
That's really good. Yeah,
Yeah,
they Coleman was mocked to them, I think, early in the
yeah,
draft mocking process, and then his stock kind of fell, but he fits a position of need for them, so I like
yeah.
that there. Now we move to San Francisco. They could use a couple of things, but I think they might dive into a future replacement of Trent Williams, and
Yeah.
they get Talise Fuanga out of Oregon State. He's fallen a lot further than where he's usually been mocked, but I really like this spot with San Francisco. And now we get the Kansas City Chiefs to end round 1. And how are you going to pop this off?
This one, Justin's going to Xavier Worthy will be a chief,
Wow.
Justin.
Okay.
What's going on with Rasheed Rice, has a cause for concern. Now they'll have 2 speedy guys in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy to go along with Travis Kelsey. We're pretty sure that Rasheed Rice is going to miss this year. We might not get to see him unfortunately play ever again. There's a chance that could be a thing, and with that, I do think that Kansas City has to start looking at to the future with another pass catcher, and they have to give another pass catcher to Mahomes. It has to happen. So that's why I believe that's where Kansas City ends things in the first round.
And that would be a really great end to the night. I mean, we had a really a lot of receivers, a
I would
handful of receivers,
say 7
three,
receivers. 7.
7 receivers, or eight receivers are off the
Oh,
board. We
eight,
got
eight.
Marvin Malik, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas, A.D. Mitchell, Lad McConkey, Keon Coleman, and Xavier Worthy. What
Yeah.
a plethora of wide receivers. But that kind of just highlights what we've been talking about on how stacked this class is at wide receiver. But really, okay, that's round one. Okay, we're doing a 2-round mock, and we start with Detroit, who just traded back with the Carolina Panthers near the end of night one. And I'm looking at what they should do. They made a trade for Carlton Davis, but I think they still could use some secondary love, and they're going to get Nate Wiggins
Mm.
out of Clemson, a smaller cornerback. That's what a lot of people are critiquing for him, but he's quick and he's a really good pass defender. I really like him as a Detroit Lion. So yeah, all right. Now we're to New England. They had a big move. They got their franchise quarterback in Drake May in the first round, and now they're up to you. What are they doing with their second rounder?
Justin, I'm so tempted to just pick a defensive player so bad just because it's Gerard Mayo, the history of Bill Belichick. That's the shadow over there in New England over Gillette Stadium. I'm so tempted to, Justin, but I just feel like they need to get in linemen to protect their future. So let's go. I'm gonna go with a guard, Justin. Let's go Christian Haynes out of UConn. He's regarded as one of the highest, UConn or highest guards out there in this year's draft. And like I said, I wanted to pick a defensive player so bad, but I just feel like the Patriots need to get some lineman help for their franchise quarterback.
That's really yeah, and he is him and Zach Frazier are kind of the top guards besides Graham Barton. And it's versatile inside help that the Patriots need to help with their
Mm-hmm.
new franchise quarterback. So
Mm-hmm.
now we move to Arizona. They had of course Maserati Marv and they picked Laiatu Latu in the first and with their first 2 picks. And so they're here at their next pick, and they got some things that they could do here. I'm really interested at what the decision might be, and they might decide to jump in on offensive line help. That or corner help was what was going on in my head. And let me look at the corners. The corners, I don't know if I want the Michigan product there. So that kind of gets me to thinking that O line might be the answer, and they're going to get a guy that's pretty close to home with Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. A really good player, and it kind of fits to what they could be building. And they like to bring a guy that's just played down the road for the Arizona Wildcats. So yeah, I got Jordan Morgan, another O lineman, is off the board, and we jump to Washington, who has their new franchise quarterback as well, and Jaden Daniels.
Okay, so with the Commanders, I'm tempted to pick another offensive lineman for their future quarterback. However, I feel like with Dan Quinn as the head coach, and they just picked up offensive player in the first round, they're gonna go defense, and I'm gonna go with Chop Robinson out of Penn State to be their edge to replace what they thought Chase Young would be before they traded him away. Uh, and so, yeah, Chop Robinson out of Penn State will be a real decent edge. I feel like he can flourish under Dan Quinn as Micah Parsons was able to do when Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator there in Dallas. So yeah, chop and Washington.
That's good. And Chop Robinson, an NFL Combine, people were in love with what he did. He showed some real speed. He's a little bit smaller size for an edge rusher, but he's
Yeah,
got that speed, and they definitely need edge after they had a wholesale sending out Chase Young and Sweat last
yeah.
at the trade deadline. So that's good there. The Chargers, I just checked. Yeah, they got Malik Neighbors and they got Graham Barton, so they've addressed some offense. And now I'm looking at what they could do on the defensive side. Their interior linemen are not great. They could use
Yeah.
help there, and so that's what I'm going to do here. They're going to get Johnny Newton out of Illinois. The critique on him is he's got smaller hands and smaller arms, but he's really he's a real game changer on the defensive line. And with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack taking the edge off, he might have some really good opportunities to make a name for himself in his first season with the Chargers. Now we're moving to Tennessee, the Tennessee Titans. What you got?
Okay, I have. This is a dream scenario. I'm a Texans fan. Now, will the Titans ever make a trade with the Texans? Probably not. But let's make this fun, Justin. I have the Titans and my Houston Texans making a little trade. Uh, I'm not sure how this would work, Justin. You would say maybe Texans give away their fourth, or
They could give up a late pick. It's only 4 picks away that they could
okay, cool.
swap.
So let's make that trade. And Justin, the Texans, who this is one of my favorite players in this draft as far as second round. And let's go with Jeremiah Trotter Jr., a linebacker out of Clemson. You look at what the Texans lost. They lost a Blake Cashman and Jonathan Grenard and those type of guys. So I feel like they're going to need a linebacker. They don't really need to look at offense so much. They have a loaded offense. So let's build on our defense and that D'Amico Ryans can elevate. And I love me some Trotter in Houston. I would be so happy if my Texans would be able to do that, even though they did not pick in the first round.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Uh, and Trotter's another famous player in this draft who
Yeah,
his father was a really good player in the NFL a handful of years ago.
yeah.
So they get a linebacker, which they needed to address. Obviously, I know we were talking about hopefully they were going to be in a spot to get Edgerrin Cooper, but
Ooh.
Trotter's the next best thing
Mm-hmm.
because Edge is gone. And now we're on to Carolina, and they got Lad McConkey with their first pick. They made some really good moves this offseason. You know, they added Deontay. They did lose Brian Burns, which makes me think that they should go that route. They kind of need tight end help. I don't love their running backs, but I think they're going to stick with it because they paid Miles Sanders some big money.
Yeah,
And then cornerback, too, is kind of – they could use a number of different things, I really think.
yeah.
And thinking, man, where could they go here? I'm going to look, and I'm going to go – I think I might go some defense here. I'm going to go with Braden Fisk out of Florida State. He also was a really big combine winner. People were in love with what he was doing, especially amongst great guys like Byron Murphy, Johnny Newton, Tavondre Sweat. He did really well, was really good off his breaks and stuff like that. So they get a defensive piece that is much needed, and that transitions us to the Washington Commanders, who you just picked Chop Robinson
Yeah.
for their last pick, and then they got Jaden Daniels in their first pick.
So I actually have a trade going on here, Justin. I looks like Baltimore doesn't. I think they do. Pick in the second round. Let's see. It looks like 30th, the third, 62th overall, but the 32. So I do think that Baltimore, Justin, they just lost Patrick Queen, who signed with Pittsburgh. So now, Baltimore's going to go back to what they usually do. They don't really draft offense that much. They like to build on their defense. So if I'm looking at what is out there around this time, Baltimore makes the trade with Washington. Washington already has 3 picks. They're fine with trading back and getting whatever. And I do think, Justin, that the Ravens make a trade to get Junior Colson out of Michigan, a guy that's familiar with the Harbaughs, who played under Harbaugh, who's going to go with John Harbaugh, the brother. And I feel like, when you look at what the Chargers, they got some former Jim Harbaugh guys with, JK and Gus Edwards going there. I feel like that's kind of the other way around, where John Harbaugh is going to get former Jim Harbaugh guys. So I feel like it goes both ways. Make the trade and get their linebacker to replace Patrick Queen.
Yeah. I think that's good there. The linebacker run is continuing. And it leads to me here, which I think they could go linebacker as well because they cut Devondre Campbell, the Green Bay Packers, that is. But I think they're going to go safety here. I know they got Xavier McKinney, but they could still use some help there. And Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, a really good piece to help on that defense. And for a team that really exceeded expectations last year, they just need a few things that could really make a good playoff run, and I think Nubin could be a good piece for them. Now moving to the Tennessee Titans, which you are on the clock with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've only had 1 pick so far.
I have another trade going on, Justin. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but how about Minnesota trading with Tennessee? They just signed Aaron Jones. I think you might know where I'm going with this, Justin. They just signed Aaron Jones, but how, we're familiar with Green Bay. He wasn't always healthy in Green Bay. So Minnesota trades up and takes the first running back off the board, and it's none other than Trey Benson out of Florida State, going to Minnesota to follow the legacy greats of Adrian Peterson and Dalvin Cook. So many great running backs in Minnesota, and they take the next one with Trey Benson becoming a Minnesota Viking. And now it gets interesting in that backfield with JJ McCarthy, as we drafted earlier, being the next quarterback, having two running backs to rely on, Justin, and make that offense a little bit better. Trey Benson finally 42 picks in, Justin, and we get the first running back off the board. And that's how it usually goes in these NFL drafts. Running backs around the 40th pick overall get picked.
Yeah, and as a fantasy fan, I hate that because it would hurt both of their
Yeah,
values. But it's a good pick for the team, especially with Aaron Jones kind of going downward on his career
yeah,
trajectory. He's kind of getting older up there. Benson would be a really good future replacement and a good compliment to him this year. Now we move to Atlanta. They don't need running backs, so they'll stick there. Quarterback's good, of course. The receivers, they kind of addressed that pretty well. They got the edge rusher in the first round, which makes me interested on what they could do here in the second. Um, I know they got Rondell and Darnell Mooney, but
yeah,
it's still not the prettiest corner room.
yeah,
Let me look at their roster a little bit because they could go with corner. I know they got AJ Terrell, who is a really solid piece for
yeah,
them. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go with cornerback,
yeah,
and I'm gonna get us Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri. A lot of people have talked about him because he actually, what I believe he only had
yeah.
one interception in his college career, and people are like, "What the heck? You can't. How are you a good cornerback?" But he's like glue on the receiver, and he played really well at Missouri this past season. So I got Ennis Rakestraw Jr. to a team that has now addressed two defensive holes for them.
Yeah. Uh, so with my pick, with the Giants on the clock, I want to be a homer and I want to pick a Cougar. There's probably only one Cougar that probably get picked out of Houston. So let's go Patrick Paul, Justin. With the Giants, obviously we don't know who's going to be the quarterback. We don't know who's going to be the running back. We don't know who's going to be the wide receiver. But hey, let's get an offensive lineman. It's probably the most New York Giant thing to do. I do think they're kind of just taking this draft and kind of getting ready to be the worst team going into next year. With Denver picking a quarterback, I feel like it's the Giants who's the clear-cut number one pick going into next year's draft. So hey, at least we'll have an offensive tackle to block for our franchise quarterback next year.
All right, Patrick Paul. I think he did pretty solidly at the
Yeah.
combine. He has some good intangibles to be groomed to be a really good O lineman. And I'm going to the Saints now. And I know you talked about how they got Chris Olave,
Hmm.
but I think they're going to address wide receiver here. There's a few guys that are kind of on my mind: Malachi Corley, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson. Chris Olave played outside. He plays outside most of the time. Rashid Shaheed is a pretty good deep threat on the
Yeah.
on the other side of Olave. So I think they're going to address the slot, and they're going to get Ricky Pearsall
Hmm.
out of Florida. Could really help Derek Carr because man, he looked really bad last year, and they're going to need to add some pieces to that room to help him out because checking it down to Alvin Kamara is just not going to work.
Yeah.
As they were trying to force it last year. They also have a new OC and Clint Kubiak, so
Okay.
hopefully with Ricky Pearsall, we could actually see a pretty offense in New Orleans. But yeah, all right, moving on to the Colts. You got them. I took Brian Thomas for them on their first pick, and now we're at their second one. What you got?
I think they go defense here, and this guy slipped past. He's right there, Peyton Wilson. He is regarded as the top linebacker, even though I think Cooper is better, Justin. But let's go ahead and get Peyton Wilson. With the Colts, they got rid of Shaq Barrett, or not Shaq Barrett, Shaq Leonard last year. They haven't really had that star defensive linebacker to be in that stout defense. That defense has always been so stingy, and I think they're going to be a stingier defense this year. Why not add Peyton Willis to be our run stopper? The Colts will be a very solid team this year for sure.
And Peyton Willis, I think the reason he's been, I mean, like, I think his talent is amongst the best
Yeah,
um, out of that room, but he just gets hurt a lot,
yeah,
and that's what's been the issue surrounding him is kind of like, can he be, what they really want, or can he be on the field for a while because of his injury concerns? So
yeah.
that's but when he's on the field, he's really good. So
Hmm.
all right, now the next pick is the Giants, but I think they trade back with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Pittsburgh, they get the chance to get an O lineman that they need. They need a center really bad, so they get Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon, who's fallen further than uh, he's been mocked to so far, and they're really happy with moving up and scooping him up and really helping that O line, which they've had some struggles with uh, over the last few seasons. So I got Jackson Powers Johnson to pair with A.D. Mitchell. It's a really good
Yeah.
offensive help to really help Russell Wilson and maybe Justin Fields too. So yeah, now we're to Jacksonville, where they've made some moves. They made a trade, I believe. I'm trying to remember what happened here. They moved and got Troy Franklin. That's right. They helped with their wide receiver room, and now they're back on the clock. And what do they decide to do?
So Justin, we talked about this earlier, but hey, Jacksonville makes a trade. Seattle trades up, and Justin, Seattle says, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go get that gunslinger who used to be a Sooner and is now formerly also an Arkansas Razorback. Let's go ahead and let's do it. Let's get Spencer Rattler. We don't pick in the second round. I'm looking at this second round, selections. Seattle probably feels like, hey, we do have Sam Howell, but we don't believe in him. We have Geno Smith, but how long could that last? So let's go get a gunslinger who was what we talked about earlier, the Senior Bowl MVP. That impresses us. This guy's still here. Let's go get Spencer Rattler. Maybe if he can learn a little bit week 1, week 2, if we're, 0-2, 1-3, then hey, let's go put that guy in. He's going to get the ball to DK and Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba we like. So Rattler is a Seattle Seahawk. And I like him, Justin, being picked in the late second round. I don't think that's, an over, a buy. I feel like that's right for Rattler, maybe a third, but hey, I want to see Rattler. That's like one of my dream scenarios. Rattler in Seattle, that gunslinger mentality he has, getting to those 3 talented wide receivers and those 2 running backs in the backfield that are so good. So Rattler in Seattle changes that division.
Yeah, that would be a nice setup for him. I know Gino would probably start this year, as you
Yeah,
mentioned.
yeah,
But with having DK, incoming JSN, and I don't know how much longer Tyler Lockett has, but if he gets any chance to be with him too, it would be really good for him. So it's a good situation for him to grow into. Now we're to Cincinnati. They took Amarius Mims with their first pick, and I think they need to address the
yeah,
defensive line with their second one because they lost DJ Reader to the Lions, and so I have them going with Tivondre Sweat out of Texas. I know he had the little issue with the law recently, but I
yeah,
think it's that'll subside. I don't think that's a big problem. But besides that, he's a huge athlete who is just I believe he was like in the Heisman conversation for a while at
yeah.
Texas. He just played really well, and so I have Tavondre Sweat as a Cincinnati Bengal to replace DJ Reader.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So with Philly, there's a lot of different things they could do there, Justin. Uh, you know, I feel like Philly is just loaded all the way. However, did they pick a wide receiver in any at all in our mock?
No, they took a cornerback, Quinion Mitchell.
Okay, so I don't think Xavier Leggett has been picked, has he? I
No, he
think
has not.
he. Okay, so Philly needs another wide receiver to go along with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. They go with Leggett. They feel like this is going to be their wide receiver 3. Devontae Parker's good, but I don't think he's a solidified wide receiver 3. So let's draft our guy. Give Jalen Hurts another guy to throw the ball to. We already have a pretty loaded defense. We do need to add a little bit more, but Leggett has dropped. Justin, on ESPN he's ranked wide receiver 6. I believe on your list he was. Looking
He
at
was
14.
8 or
So,
9.
yeah, about 14, 13. Not bad for him to fall that deep. Philly didn't have to trade up to get him. So, Xavier Leggett falls to Philly and, becomes a pretty decent receiver for the Eagles.
Yeah, I like that move there. Leggett, obviously, I voiced concerns about him just because he had one big year of production,
Yeah.
and besides that, it wasn't too special. But his 1 year of production was really successful. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that there. All right, we moved to the Giants, and gosh, this one's tough too because I kind of want to go tight end
Mm-hmm.
with Darren Waller, kind of on the edge of I'm gonna retire, I'm not gonna retire.
Yeah.
But I just saw another guy that I'm really interested in. I think they might go running back because
Yeah,
they only I mean they signed Devin Singletary, but they might need a new franchise guy after losing Saquon.
yeah,
So they're going to get Jonathan Brooks here, and kind of snipe him from Dallas because I'm pretty sure Dallas was itching to grab him, but they miss out, and the Giants get their new franchise running back. And while he's recovering, it can be Devin Singletary's backfield. And
nice.
I think they would set them up pretty well. So yeah, that's Jonathan Brooks, an interesting fantasy option there to the Giants. Now we got the Rams in Europe.
Yeah, so they're definitely. I feel like they're gonna go tackle here. Looking down this list, has Talise Foga from Oregon State been
He
picked?
did.
He
He
was
did get
picked. He
picked.
was picked. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Let's look at the guards here that are remaining. Let's go ahead and get Cooper Beebe. You know they already have a good Cooper at wide receiver. Why not get a guard? I feel like with the Rams at this point, their offense is established. They just need to beef up that O line just a little bit and protect Stafford. In his last couple of years, we're seeing the end of Stafford's career. Probably 1 to 2 to 3 more years left there. Want to get him a good offensive line so he can get the ball to guys like Puka and Cooper Cup, and as well as they can run the ball. I kind of wanted to go tight end, Justin, but I think it's a little early to go tight end, especially for the Rams' sake. So let's get another offensive lineman there in LA.
Cool. All right. I like that there. I was definitely thinking O line was the move.
Yeah,
And I have that for the Jacksonville Jaguars too. Their O line underwhelmed last year,
yeah.
and they kind of just brought everybody back. And it's like, well, you guys didn't improve anywhere. So I think they bring in Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, who's fallen pretty far. But I think he'll be a really good help for them, to really help that O line and help Trevor Lawrence kind of have his breakout year that we're kind of waiting for. But yeah, all right, we're on to Cleveland. It's their first pick in this draft
Ooh,
because obviously with Houston, with the Deshaun Watson trade this last bit. So yeah, what does Cleveland decide to do
yeah.
in the second?
Yeah, Justin, looking at the Browns, they had a really solid defense this year. Very surprising. And I feel like they're going to add to that. So let's see. Has Cedric Gray been picked? A linebacker out of North Carolina. I like the fit there for Cleveland to add a linebacker to beef up that, defense. Justin, they do have a pretty set wide receiver room with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, who they drafted. Obviously, the running backs, they're always going to have some to go under Nick Chubb. So I feel like they're going to just add more to their defense.
Cool. All right, and I'm gonna have another team jump up and add to the defense. I know the Texans already traded up once, but they're gonna trade up again.
Yes.
Um, because they need a position and they need cornerback.
Uh,
And there's one cornerback left for them. Oh, there are actually two. I really like Kamari Lassiter, but I got TJ Tampa going to the Texans, because yeah, so they lost Steve Nelson and they decided to replace him with Jeff Okuda, and that's just okay. It's not a big change, but I really like TJ Tampa. I think he's one of the last good cornerbacks to go in the first couple rounds, and so I have that happening there. And now you got the Cowboys who went corner themselves in the first round. So what do they do here?
so Justin, I love this. Probably gonna be my favorite pick of this mock, and I think the Cowboys, who just lost Tony Pollard, they're not 100% if they like Dowdle, or the other guy. Who's that short guy from Kansas State they drafted last year? Um,
Oh, Deuce Vaughn.
Deuce Vaughn. They're not 100% ready. So, Justin, let's go running back and let's get the reigning natty champion out of Michigan running back, Blake Corum, who fits with this offense perfectly, gives Dak a powerhouse, a workhorse running back who can come in immediately and be the guy. And Justin, fantasy wise, I mean, we're talking fourth or fifth round for Blake Corum. If that were to happen in Dallas, the goal line
Yeah.
touches would be magnificent, and we would love to see Blake Corum down in Dallas and Jerry World wearing the blue star.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah,
They definitely need running back. They miss out on those top couple of guys, but they get Blake Corum, who showed he can handle the rock at Michigan at the one of the bigger
yeah,
stages of college football. So I like that a lot. Moving to Tampa, they got Edgerrin Cooper with their first pick, and I did not hesitate thinking with the second pick. They lost Ryan Jansen; he retired. So why not bring in another center or the replacement center and Zach Frazier out of West Virginia? Pretty simple chop pick, but I really think that's a big position of need for them. And that moves us to the Packers, who they took Tyler Nubin in the second, and in the first they took O lineman. So what are they going to do here, the Green Bay Packers?
With Green Bay, they're not the most flashiest of pick. They don't pick. Oh my God, we're gonna go with that best talented guy. They're just gonna go with someone they feel like they think they're good. So I'm gonna pick a sleeper here. We're not really sure how established that secondary is in Green Bay. So let's go with Javon Bullard, a safety out of Georgia. I feel like the Packers are always looking to beef their secondary, their D line, their O line. They already have a franchise quarterback with a good set of receivers, and they signed Josh Jacobs. So they're gonna, look to beef up their defense some more.
Okay. All right. All right. I don't hate it. I like it.
Mhm.
They'll really be they'll be deep at that position after that. Now we're on to Miami, who I had them going O line in the first, and I think with the cutting or releasing of Xavier Howard, they're going to want to replace him, and they're going to get Kamari Lassiter, and which would be a really great pick for them. Really fixes a position of need and would be a good second piece behind Jalen Ramsey. So yeah, I got Kamari Lassiter, and now we move to Buffalo, who didn't take receiver in the first. Is it the time to take one now?
Yes, Justin. Now I love Roman Wilson, but we need a Rice. We need a legend on our team now. We need a guy who had 12 touchdowns to replace what Diggs was able to do when he was on our team. So let's go with Brendan Rice, making his name for himself in that Rice legacy, wearing number 2 for Buffalo, and becoming a Buffalo Bill, and is now Josh Allen's number 1 target. And maybe a guy that we look at now in fantasy drafts a little bit differently now, Justin, now that he's getting passes from Josh Allen.
Yeah, I like that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's pretty good. They definitely need a receiver, and that's a good change of pace for them. Um, Next we got the Detroit Lions, and I feel like they filled up a lot of good pieces
Yeah.
for them. They traded back, got Nate Wiggins. Oh man, what could they do here? I'm trying to think. I'm thinking of a possible trade, but I think I'm gonna hold off on that because they traded already in the first round. Um, Man, I think they could go wide receiver. They're not gonna go Roman Wilson because he's a slot guy, and they already have a slot guy
Yeah.
in Amonra. They lost Josh Reynolds, which makes me think they might go this way. Um, Man, that's tough. I know. I think they might jump to defense. Let me look at the defensive side, what they could bring in because I mean they have just about everything they want. Oh, you know what? They need an edge rusher
Yeah.
because they have Aiden Hutchinson, but they really need a good counterpart to that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these two names right here: Darius Robinson and Chris Braswell. And man, I'm gonna go with Darius Robinson because he was a Senior Bowl favorite, and I love Senior Bowl favorites. So I got Darius Robinson going to the Detroit Lions. And now we're back to you with the Washington Commanders. I believe they traded back with Baltimore for this pick. And so let's see what decision are they gonna make
Yeah,
here?
Justin, looking at the depth chart for Washington, they have a guy. I think we drafted a center for Jaden Daniels. I think they drafted a defensive edge to replace, and Washington
Yeah,
has a lot of picks in the first 2 rounds. So now I'm looking at the offense. Back to the offense. Jaden Daniels has a center, but looking at the tight end position, Justin, they have Zach Ertz, who's getting up there in age, and their second tight end is a John Bates, who's no one really heard of. So let's go tight end, and they're going to go with Cade Stover to be their Dalton Schultz, a rookie to rookie combo for many, many years to come in Washington with Jaden Daniels going to Cade Stover for many touchdowns. And that offense is pretty loaded with Terry McLaurin, and what they have at running back. So let's get our tight end of the future. Cade Stover goes to Washington.
yeah, and with Stover, and you spoke about Zach Ertz, he could be a real a good
Yeah,
mentor for Stover to really
yeah,
transition to the NFL. So I like that there. All right, now we're with the 49ers, and my first idea went to them making a trade near the end of the second. I'm looking for the team. Why can't I find the team I want? Oh, here it is. I have the New York Jets. I know they drafted Brock Bowers, but I think they do a little bit more on that offense because they really want to make Aaron Rodgers happy, and so they're gonna go wide receiver and really, round out that offense.
yeah,
And I think they go with Roman Wilson out of Michigan, a really good slot guy that could be a good help. Besides, obviously Garrett Wilson on one side, Mike Williams on the other side, and Roman Wilson will be the slot man. and they get a wide receiver there near the end of the second. And now to you to finish out our 2-round mock draft. Who do you have the Chiefs taking?
Well, I have a trade going on, Justin. It's between the Chiefs
Okay.
and the Giants. Now,
Okay.
it's a little weird of this trade, but I'm going them trading up to get Joe Milton. I know that's it's kind of
Oh
random,
wow.
but hey, I want to make a little bit of a fireworks spark here. The Giants are looking at themselves. We just got a running back in Brooks, and we don't want him to be all alone there. We did get an offensive lineman and Patrick Paul. Let's get a quarterback that maybe could be a bridge guy. We're not too sure on this guy, but we're also not sure about Drew Lock and Daniel Jones. So let's get Milton and see what we can do. Brian Daboll is a competitive guy. He's not going to want to tank. So let's get Daboll a competent quarterback and end this off with Joe Milton being a Giant.
I like it. And wow, that ends our draft, guys. We had 2 full rounds. We got it in within right at an hour, which we're really happy about. And wow, so the draft's right ahead, guys. Thursday. So time's ticking. We are getting really close to the big night, where lives will be changed. Hundreds of players now will have new homes, and it only is to the happiness of us. We get to cipher it out, picking
Yep.
fantasy and just picking team wise. That's what we did here today. So we are done. Thank you guys for listening. The draft's ahead. We can't wait, and stay tuned because next week we will cover every single inch of what happens from Thursday through Saturday. And so we're really happy about it. And thanks for listening to the episode. These are more of the fun episodes, mock drafting, especially for the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So thank you guys again. And Genoa, send us out, man.
Dewey Nation, we love you guys. Thank you for watching, and we will be back with much more content. On Thursday, it's going to be such a fun day. And hey, Dewey Nation, we are here. We're ready to rock. We're ready to go, man. Y'all have a great week, and peace.
Peace.